This is a continuing lesson taken from Brother Ross's book on cultivating Christian character. And the next one is the first part of punctuality versus tardiness. Punctuality versus tardiness. There in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 1, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Our text and the verses that follow make it clear that the sovereign God, who has appointed all things in eternity that come to pass in time, has set an example of punctuality that is unrivaled by anyone. We read further there in verse 2, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war, a time of peace. I was reading an article yesterday about Ecclesiastes and how Ecclesiastes perplexes people. And they're not real sure why Solomon wrote it. But I have studied the book. I have actually taught on it, I think, 3 times. And to me, it's very easy to understand. And it just comes down to this: if God's not in it, if Christ is not in it, then it is vanity, which means it's a zero. It means nothing. So Solomon was coming to that. He says, well, I did all this stuff. I did all these things. And he said, it's all vanity, because the problem lies in that when I die, it goes to somebody else and they won't appreciate it because I'm the one that did it. So I've had many, as I was teaching it, argue about certain things concerning Ecclesiastes. And I think people have a misunderstanding about Ecclesiastes, and I think once you come to a realization of what it actually means, it'll be a blessing to you. But what we want to talk about this week is punctuality. Punctuality. God is always right on time in the execution of his sovereign will and purpose. Though we cannot duplicate God's flawless record of punctuality because of our human frailties, we are nevertheless called upon to follow his holy example. Turn to Ephesians chapter 5, if you would. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 1, which I'm sure many of you know this verse. Ephesians 5 and chapter 1. Be therefore followers of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ also hath loved us and hath given himself for us an offering and a sacrifice to God, a sweet-smelling savor. Punctuality is a disciplined ability to be prompt. To be prompt in one's appointments and consistently on time in his various engagements throughout the day. Punctuality is a virtuous character. It's a virtuous character trait that shows respect for other people and their time. My brother Ray and I knew a man, and he was married to a Korean lady, and they attended the church. Even before I knew Brother Ray, attended the same church I did, and then we called Brother Ray as a pastor of the one church, and over the years I worked with him and everything, and over the years I learned that in Korea, or if you're dealing with Korean people, that if you're early, it's an insult. If you're late, it's an insult. They expect you to be on time every time. That's their philosophy. That's what they live by. You have to be there on time. If you're early, if you're late, and it's an offense to them. That's pretty stringent. I don't know if any of us can live up to that, but that's what they require. So the point I'd like to make to you this morning is the prerequisites of punctuality. What is it that we can learn and do so that we're punctual? If an individual is to develop the character trait of punctuality, they must first understand the importance of time as it relates to God and others. Now, we know many times all of us push the envelope. We may get there right on time, and we may get there late. I don't think any of us really want to get there late. We want to try to make our appointments and be courteous to whoever we're meeting with to be there on time. I read an article one time that says it's useless to go to the doctor's office even up to 15 minutes early, because usually you have to wait another half hour after your appointment time. So it's not us, it's not punctual, it's the doctor, it's not punctual. But of course, we never know what they're going to run into with each individual they're seeing. But God places such a high priority on the wise use of our time that several scriptures are written to convey its importance. That's what we want to look at here for the next few minutes. I'll read this first, and then we'll go back and look at the scriptures. We are called upon to consider the briefity of life, to number our days, redeem the time, and to be aware of the fact that we have little time left to labor for the Lord. It's very short. So we'll start, you can keep your place here in Ephesians chapter 5, because we'll be coming back, but go to Psalm, the book of Psalms, verse 39. And verse 4 and 5. Lord, make me to know my end and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. Behold, thou hast made my days as a handbreadth, and mine age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. So there is taken from his father. Solomon, I believe, got this from his father because he knew what vanity was, and we see David using that as well. So, going to James, chapter 4 and verse 14. James chapter 4 and verse 14. It's amazing. I was talking to someone on the phone, and I was right here, James chapter 4 and verse 14. And there was an encouragement there to read a few of the verses ahead of that at the same time I was in the book. But James chapter 4 and verse 14, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. And then going back to Psalms and chapter 90, we see that we need to, in numbering our days, 90 chapter, and excuse me, chapter 90 and verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. So it's not that we're trying to figure out when we're going to die. That's not what it's talking about. But what's talking about, number our days, because we don't know how many number of days we're going to have. So what we want to do is spend each day serving the Lord every day, because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And then, of course, I just preached on this, going back to Ephesians chapter 5, redeeming the time. If you remember a few weeks ago, I preached on this. But verses 15 through 17, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Wherefore, be not unwise, but understanding that the will of the Lord is, what the will of the Lord is, and be not drunk with wine wherein excess, but be filled with the Spirit. So we're giving that to understand that each day that we live, it's evil. And as we go through each and every day, tomorrow's going to be more evil than it was today. I was thinking about August 8th when we vote, unless you voted ahead of time. And it's very possible that on August 8th, at the end of that day, that our days will become even more evil than they are right now. It appears that not many understand this issue that's on the ballot. And you need to understand it, and you need to pass it on to others. Make sure that people understand it, because it's going to change the course of Ohio and other states, because basically they're using this as an experiment type for other states, and other states have already done it. So we're going to do it, so we have to be careful what we do. But here's a great opportunity for us to lose greatly. But in Colossians chapter 4 and verse 5, Paul tells the church there, walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Redeem it. Make full use of it. Make sure that you are taking that day and applying it to the Lord, and doing everything you can on that day for the Lord, because we don't know. At the end of that day, we may be in glory. At the end of that day, we may be face to face with Jesus Christ. And then anything we try to do prior to that is it. Whatever you've done, whether good or bad, that's it. We will not have any other opportunity. But Christ will judge us for our works, whether they be good or bad. And so we either will have a large pile of Woodhaven stubble that's going to be tried with fire, becomes ashes, or we're going to have these gold and silver crowns and jewels that we can take back and replace, give him at his feet. So we sure aren't going to take ashes and give back to him. And again, to be aware of the fact that we have little time left to labor for the Lord. So we want to make good use of it. We want to make good use of our time. And we do everything for the Lord. Turn to John chapter 9, verse 4. John chapter 9 and verse 4, Jesus explains this here. He said, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. Now, he's not just talking about the darkness at night when it gets dark out. He's not just talking about that. But when the night cometh, when we close our eyes for the final time, see, the work's done. We can't do any more work. All the work's already been in the books, so to speak. So whatever we have done, then that is what everything's going to be based on concerning our meeting with Christ at the bema seat of Christ and the great at Christ's throne there to be judged of him for what we've done. Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13, verse 11 and 12. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. So, just comes down to the more armor or light we have on, the better off we're going to be when we stand before Jesus. Now, punctuality manifests a respectful use of one's time. So it's very important that you're careful with your time. Now, there's many out there today that are at the Ohio State Fair. Okay. There's many out there right now that are at the golf course, at the lake. They're doing everything but being where they should be, and that's here. So, they're not making full use of their time. Now, they may be in the flesh and think all this is real fun and enjoyable and everything, but there's no meat out there. The meat is here. The Word of God is here. God Himself is here. Jesus is here. And Brother Ray mentioned again, the angels are here when we're meeting in the service. They're looking to know. They're looking to find out. They don't know the redemptive work of Jesus Christ. So in order for a person to be punctual, they must exercise a daily discipline and determination to be on time for their appointments. There's nothing worse than waiting. My wife and I, we've experienced that many times being in our position at the park. We set a time with the person and we expect them to be there on time. So if we say 10 o'clock and 10 o'clock rolls around and not there, I'm on the phone finding out what happened. Oh, I meant to call you. Well, then I know my face turns red and the steam starts flying out of my ears and my nose, and it's like, so you're saying you're not coming? No, I'm not going to make it today. Yeah, well, thank you for letting me know. I just wasted my whole morning waiting on you to be here when I could have been doing something else. So it happens more often than I'd like to think about. So we can understand, over the years the doctors have gotten wise to this, and if you don't show up, you still have to pay. That's, they come to the place and say, hey, it's fine, man. If you don't want to be here, just give me your money and we're fine. See? So they got wise to that because people were missing their appointments. So what else? You can't expect them to do anything else, right? I don't blame them. So a person who makes punctuality a habit plans to be on time by way of preparation. My mom and dad were notorious. No matter what we were doing as a family, church as well, they were always late. So we wised up. We're eating at 12, we're eating at 11. Then by the time they get there, it's 12 and we're ready to eat. But I had to tell them 11. I always told them an hour earlier than what we had to be. One time I got caught and they said, well, you're not ready to eat. Why so early? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? You're always late. You have to explain it to them. You're always late. So it never mattered. And, well, I just can't get ready that early. And I said, well, if you get up just a little bit earlier, you'll have that time to make it, And that's all it is just preparation. Prepare, And makes me think just how many people are preparing to meet Jesus when he comes. Have you made preparation for that? Are you sure you're in the right place that you should be in, thinking that Jesus is coming back? See, that's preparation. That's being prepared. We don't know what time he's coming back. We don't know what day he's coming back. But wouldn't you like to be prepared for that? That's why many preachers say, if Jesus comes back now, that would be great. Well, except for the ones that aren't here, that wouldn't be so great. So, in order to be punctual, an individual must take his agreement to be at a certain place at a certain time seriously. And I think that's where it lies. People are not serious about being punctual. They're not serious about being, it's just so-and-so. Or some people may have that, it's just church. They understand if I'm late. Not really. May never say anything, but it's not that I'm understanding. Because I always thought that if you just leave a little bit earlier. I had to change my chiropractor appointment for tomorrow because I need to be here in the morning. So I have to leave between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning to make sure that I get through to get here to meet my 10 o'clock appointment. I got to get here that early? Well, let me tell you what happened. I left at 5 o'clock because they had 2 people who were going to be here, 9 and 10 o'clock. And there was an accident. And all I had to do is go another mile and I'd have been out of it. But the State Air Patrol pulled right in front of me and stopped me because the accident was right there. And there I sat an hour. If I had not left at 5 o'clock, I probably wouldn't have made it. So I got here, appointment's at 9 o'clock, rolls around, nobody shows up. 10 o'clock, nobody shows up. So I got on the phone with the lady and I did get a little upset. And I said, there's nobody here. Well, there must have something happened. I said, well, don't you think it had been courteous for that person to call me and say, I'm not going to be able to make it today because they didn't do that. So I was a little bit irate. The other person showed up, but they were an hour later because I think it was a tune the piano. I had them both here come at the same time. Now this is a business. In fact, it was Spectrum. Didn't even have the courtesy to call me and tell me that they weren't going to be here. So see, I made all that preparation for me to be here, but then they didn't show up. And then the stress it caused me because I figured, well, I don't know how soon this accident's going to be cleared up so I can, get back on the road. So, thus, punctuality is seen to be a byproduct of integrity, honesty, fidelity, and faithfulness. I believe in all those things. And I think they should apply when it comes to being punctual. If you say you're going to be there, then that's what I expect. And I think you would do the same thing. Want of punctuality is in reality a want of virtue. We want to be virtuous people. Therefore, we want to be punctual. We hear this, better late than never, is not half so good as a maximum as better never late. Punctuality demonstrates a respect for the time of others. When you're not here, you're using up my time. And if you're waiting on somebody, they're using up your time. I mean, how many times you've had to wait on somebody and it's like, okay, I could be doing this, this, and this, but I can't because I can't leave the house until this person shows up. I mean, we had a repairman come one time and he was supposed to come, waited all day, never showed. I had to call. Where are they at? Well, let me check. It's like the person that was supposed to be coming should have been the one that called, not you, and I shouldn't have to go through this. So I waited another whole week for this person to show up. Brother Ross stated this in his book, appointments once made become debts. If I have made an appointment with you, I owe you punctuality. I have no right to throw away your time, even if I do my own. I agree with that. I agree with that. So it is a show of disrespect when you make others wait on you. You're just being disrespectful. I always thought it was courteous if somebody wasn't going to be here this morning to let me know. And there's two reasons for that. Do they have to answer to me? No, they don't have to answer to me. But I don't have to worry about what happened. I don't have to worry about if they're in a bad accident. I don't have to worry about if there's something wrong. See, none of that will come into my mind. But when somebody's supposed to be here at 10 o'clock, they're not here, then it comes into my mind, what happened? And I'm not trying to be nosy. It's a concern. So it's a respectful thing to let me know. I had a Bible school teacher one time didn't show up. Next thing I know, one of the men in church is coming up. I said, what's going on? Oh, he called me this morning, wanted me to teach for him. Well, you would have thought the pastor would have been the first to know. And then I've had him not show up at all. Well, didn't so-and-so tell you? So-and-so's not supposed to tell me. You were supposed to call me and say, I can't be there, you know? So it's a total lack of disrespect is what it is. The last point here. Punctuality involves the consistent ordering of one's priorities. Where are your priorities? Generally speaking, those who value their job will see to it they are on time for work. I always was at least a half an hour early. Then I could just get in there, sit down, and wait for my job assignment. And then go to our jobs. When the whistle blows, we're at our jobs and we're waiting. Somebody didn't show up. So now we're waiting for them to fill that spot. So they have to run around and find out who's available to come in there and fill that spot. But they don't care. They took the day off, went fishing, went golfing, whatever. They weren't there and never called in. The same principle applies for family, church, and pleasure activities. Thus, our values are manifested by what we are on time for. I think one of the most aggravating, it was a secular thing, but back then they didn't have cell phones, so there's no way to get in touch with the person. We were supposed to meet at a restaurant at a certain time in the morning because the man was going to take me to this property and we were going to deer hunt. Well, I got halfway down here, I think it was right off of 36 and 37. The roads were a sheet of ice. And I couldn't get a hold of the fellow, so I felt obligated to be there, to meet him there. And I waited and waited and waited. And finally he showed up. So those are one of the things that we can't control sometimes, and we understand that. But when you can control things, I mean, almost everybody has a cell phone. Most everybody. Not everybody. I'm sure there are some out there that don't have it. But there should be a way to get in touch with a person to let them know they're not going to be there. You're dismissed.